Okay, now it'd be Jean Long, wouldn't it?
That's right, Christine.
Marvellous. Now, you weren't born Jean Long, I suppose.
No, I was born Jean Larson in Warrigal, and I've lived in this area my whole life. When I left school, I worked in a chemist shop in the town, so that meant I knew a lot of people. Then I went to work up in the little place up in Latrobe Street that's still there. It's called Randall's, and I opened the shop with them. It was a little delicatessen come milk bar, and I only lived 2 doors from there, so I could get up at 8:30 and be ready and go to work at 9 o'clock. And from there I got married.
Warrigal would have almost been country when you were a child.
In my mind's eye, I can walk around the town and remember all the different shops that were there then. It is just so different now.
Now, you would have had the local dairy with, did they have a clip-clop horse?
Yes. We always had the milkman came around and you left your billy out on the front veranda with your money. You didn't have bottles to start with, they put them out later on. And the dairy came from Victoria Street at the back of where Woolworths is now. It was Gleeson's Dairy. And of a Sunday afternoon, I used to walk, because I lived in Church Street, which is the other side of the state school, and I'd walk down and get the cream ready for them lunch on Sunday. You'd go to the house at the dairy.
There also would have been the night cart, and that would have been horse-drawn as well, wouldn't it?
It was, yeah. We shifted from Church Street over to the Commission. We were one of the first over in the Commission, and the night cart, I can remember him coming around then. You made damn sure that you weren't sitting on the toilet when they were due to come. Because it was outside, of course. And then they put the sewerage on, so just before I got married, the sewerage came on, so it was a great help.
And did you have any local boys come and quietly sneak up to the back of your outdoor dunny and open the trap
No, never ever had that. And sure. we had a back lane, but both of our toilets at those stages were pretty well near the house, so they wouldn't have had much cover to get there. No, but I had heard about the different ones that had happened to, of course. They used to put crackers, I know. When the penny bungers came out round about Guy Fawkes night, penny bungers, God, you'd hear those go off. We used to have the greengrocer come round too in a big van, and you went out and he weighed out all your peas and your beans, and that was great. What we could get delivered to the door, the grocer used to come, sit down, and you'd write out your list. He would take it away, come back with all the groceries. You never had to go to the supermarket or anything like that.
Gosh, that's good.
Yeah, it was great.
And of course electricity was on your whole life then.
Yes, it was. Yes, we never had any of that. So
now, did you take a backward step getting married?
No. I couldn't have ever imagined myself marrying a farmer.
Why not?
Well, I was a bit frightened of cows, wasn't I? But I used to go and stay out at my aunt's at Cloverlea on a farm, and during the holidays, and I loved that being out there. She had chooks and all sorts of things. And so, and I remember the first time I ever came out to Tetoora Rd, I thought, my God, Kevin lives at the back of beyond. Because the road was a lot different there, and you had a lot more turns. Took you an extra nearly 10 minutes to come out then in those days. And I thought, my God, where does he live? But anyway, I got used to that. And
well, you had that steep hillside, didn't you?
Got the steep hillside, yes. I was a bit worried about that. And of course, sometimes I'd have to help Kevin go out with the hay. Well, I'd be screaming me head off, because I hated putting out the hay, because you're on the side of the hill, and of course you lean up against it, and he'd be screaming out, "It's all right, it's all right."
Oh, poor you. I sympathise there. I mean, I grew up in steep country, but I didn't like the steep bits, no. But you did it, and so...
Of course you did. You had to.
And this was a dairy farming area. Everybody was
Yes.
farming, and so your Kevin would have been no different.
No,
You would have
that's
had to
right.
get in the cowshed.
Yes, so anyway, when I, of course, way I went to the cowshed, well, the farmers will tell you that the ones that have never had anything to do with cows, they're the better milkers because they train them their way.
Ah,
So I was,
Nice.
but I can't say that I never really still loved the cows, and I hated potty calves.
oh,
Little buggers, they'd tread all over your feet, and I hated doing. I wasn't the potty calf person.
oh,
I refused to do that, and of course, what do they call the ones with the
Rotary sheds?
No, the tits.
oh,
On the,
yes, yeah, yeah. On the you have a round
yeah,
container full of
yes,
milk,
and that was
tea.
much easier because you'd just have to get behind them and shove them on and make sure they're on the tit and they were right. But
Yes, that's right. Well, if you walk into a shed full of little potty calves, you just have them hanging off
Yeah.
you like limpets.
That's
all
right.
over.
Yeah, put your fingers in their mouth to get them to suck and that. No, I didn't like the potty calves. But we had chooks, and that was great because being on a farm, you can go down to get chooks eggs any time, so that was great. But
So you fell into farm life quite easily,
yes,
like
yes,
a duck to water,
I
perhaps?
did really, yes, and of course we lived in an area where there was all young couples too, so we knew everybody. And then of course when the kids came along and went to school, well, we drifted to the hall, of course, and that was it. But with the kids growing up, it was the best life you could have for a kid. None of this when they got to 12 and they'd want to go down the street and play up and whatnot like they do these days. They didn't have a hope of doing that because the only time they ever went out was when you went out. And you were always with them. But no, they had great fun.
So your dad was a timber cutter. Tell me about that.
Well, when I was a kid, he used to go away for perhaps 3 weeks on end and leave Mum and I and my brother, there was only 2 of us, and camp up the bush. And when he came home, of course, he used to sharpen all his axes and spitting on the stone and grease up his boots that they did in those days and all sorts of different things. Cut our hair, almost like put a pudding basin on your scalp and trim it around.
Yeah.
But he worked always in the bush. Dad
What
was-
about cutting fence posts? Did he work for himself?
Yes. He, well, I don't know about the fence post, but he did a lot of fencing in later years too. He used to do a lot of fencing, a lot of his fencing out at Nearham South.
Well, what did he have, a truck in those days?
No, we didn't have any sort of a vehicle until I was about 12, and we got a little old Erskine, like a ute, but with a little tray on the back. Just took 3 in the front. One year we went to Lakes Entrance for holidays, and there was Mum, my brother, and my father in the front, and we took 2 of my cousins, and the 3 girls sat in the back, and we waved to everybody. I mean, we wouldn't have got over 60 miles an hour, but we had the time of our lives doing that. But no, Dad used to get picked up by somebody and taken to work. It was a lonely life for Mum, really.
Well, your dad, he would have grown up in a settler situation,
He
wouldn't he?
was, because his father had come out from Norway. They were Norwegians. In fact, I couldn't hardly understand what his father talked about. He was so broad in the speech. And he lived on a farm with his daughter at Allenbank, the painters. Otto Larson, his name was. So Dad lived out there when he was a kid, always on farms and things like that. So
Well, Otto would have had to clear the land, wouldn't he?
I don't know about him. Kevin's grandfather did, but I don't know so much about Grandpa Larson. No. Yes, well, when we married, of course, harvest time was quite an experience for me. You wouldn't know when they were going to be coming in for tea. It could be 11 o'clock at night and they'd still expect a hot meal. And,
Were you good at that?
the wives, well, I was. The wives in those days, before round balesing came in, harvest was a menace, really. And I only had the smallest kitchen you've ever seen and a wood stove. I had a wood stove most of my married life.
And they would have heated the hot water?
They did, and it was great because during the winter the kids would come home with wet shoes. You'd put them on the hob, and you'd get your kindling and put it in the oven and dry it out ready, and all that sort of thing. It was great when you were milking because you could put your veggies on the side of on the sides of the stove, go down and milk, and they'd be just right when you came up from the shed. No, the wood stoves was a great thing, but I mean to cook a cake or anything, I had to open the door, put my hand in and feel if it was hot enough, because I never had any idea of... I mean, coming from a town where we'd had a gas stove with a thermostat on it, it took a bit to... But anyway, you soon learnt.
So did you turn out a pretty good, light, fluffy sponge in it?
Yes, they all say I'm a good cook. Well, to clean that... Open the door, brush it out with the little brush and shovel. On the top, you'd brush it down and then you'd put blackening on it. You try doing that with, and in the time frame to clean an oven these days. They take ages.
Oh.
That was one best good thing about the wood stoves. It didn't happen while I was out there, but before I got to they'd had a possum come down the flue. And, of course, they lifted it up from the bottom and the possum flew out into the kitchen. You can imagine the soot and everything that went around with that.
Would have done a nice job cleaning out the chimney.
And speaking of possums, at one stage we had Donnie Joyce come around and we had a new ceiling put into the sleep out. Well, when he took it down... or there'd been possums up in there, and one of them took off and flew out. But the nest they make is a huge thing. Yes, so...
Haystacks, they were loose haystacks then, weren't
No,
they?
not by the time I came on the scene. When Kevin was little, yes, we got photos of the farmers around your own farm. You'd get the Warns and they were there at that stage. And I don't know that the Cadbys were. It would have been his uncle, Jack Long. He lived next door, and they used to have the sweeps and do the stacking and everything like that. But no, and Kevin was about the first to get or his father, I should say, was the first to get a tractor.
Ah.
We had a little grey Fergie. And so that was a big step up then.
Little grey Fergies are famous, opening up this country.
Exactly. Because our farm was so steep, Kevin one time decided he would plough the bull paddock, which went down and sort of under, and the main road, you looked straight onto the bull paddock. So he ploughed this with his Fergie, and we used to have a line of cars sitting up on the top road watching him.
Oh.
How the hell he ever did it, he wouldn't be able to now, but growing up in the hills, you got used to that sort of thing. And I wasn't real keen on Father taking them down the paddock because our place was too steep for it. So he would have taken them more than I would have by let him. But no, I wasn't keen on that.
No, well, Dad used to use we kids as ballast on the bonnet of the grey Fergie. Mum probably didn't know.
Oh, the things you do, yeah, that's right, no. And then in later years, of course, we changed from a walk-in shed to a herringbone.
I love a walk-in shed.
Yes, it was different, but didn't do your back much good bending over with the cows. Whereas the herringbone was a lot better for that.
Yes, yeah, well, they're pretty efficient too, aren't they?
Yes, and the first night we ever changed over, Kevin's father came out because a man called Mr. Titler, Stan Titler from down, I think he was Lang Lang, he did the shed and they didn't finish it until God only knows whatever time of night, so they did a midnight milking sort of thing, and it was next morning I went down and I remember going down and poking my head round the shed, and here was Dad and Kevin, and there was manure up to the damn near the covering the hoofs of the cattle, because the cattle had never been in one of these sheds before.
Oh.
And I poked my head around and I said, "How are things going?" And Kevin's father said, I've seen some stupid things in my time, but this beats all. He thought it was the most stupid. After a couple of weeks, he didn't think that was great. But so that was that sort of thing. So, but during Tony used to go and get the cows.
Who's Tony?
That's our eldest son. I had 3 kids. Beverly was the first, Tony, and then Daryl. And Tony got on the horse one night, and it was a Sunday night too, and he went to get the cows. And the next, about half an hour later, we could hear this kid howling his head off and screaming at the top of his voice. We go out, and here he is. He's walking up the drive, and he's saying, "It's going to kill me." And he'd got off the horse, and it was a little pony, and she was inclined to nip him. Oh. He was only about 10. And he'd come from all the way over on the other side of the road, because the farm was on both sides, both steep and everything. And he'd come home, and he was not going to go back and get those damn cows. Because the cows. And then one night I remember I went to bring in cows and calves. Now you know what that entails.
Yes.
And I got over. It was right over the back paddock and very steep. And I got her almost up to the road to cross the road, and the calf took off and the cow after it, and way down. So I just turned around and walked home, and I said to Kevin, "You want that cow in? You can get it yourself." I'd had it.
Well, there must have been times when you turned around and in the pouring rain in circumstances like that and said, "How on earth did I end up here?"
Exactly. Why on earth? And another time, and I'd just had Daryl, and Kevin said, "You'll have to come down and help me birth a calf." Wow, that was an episode on its own. But anyway, I did it. But afterwards, I had to sit down in the dairy and just compose myself a bit. I felt everything that she felt.
And you had just birthed your own.
I just birthed my own, so I knew what she was going through. But yes, and another year we had the caterpillar plague.
I remember that.
It was shocking. It was shocking. You'd walk out the back door and all the paths were full of caterpillars. You'd go in the lounge and they'd be climbing up the curtains. Oh, that was a menace. It was terrible that year.
I remember as kids running around in bare feet as we did on the road, and you couldn't take a step without standing on about 30 caterpillars. And Mum would come out now and then with a basin of water and wash them off our feet.
That's right. And of course we used to, you talk about back in when I was a kid that we used to have the baker and everything come around. Well, of course you never got that until later years, and we did have a baker man come around. Well, we thought that was wonderful. Fresh bread each day, it was really good. So that was and we used to have the Rawlings man.
Yes, I remember the Rawlings man.
Yes, and then occasionally we would get another traveller that sold sheets or work clothes and things like that. Very seldom, but you did get a couple of them through the years. So that was a big help to people on the farm, because you only ever went shopping once a week.
Well, it was once a fortnight at our place, and I think even sometimes then, in between milk checks, I think not even then sometimes.
Exactly, that's right. You only went when you could generally afford it. Saying about that, I remember going in one day and I went to bank and there was no money there and I had to come home again.
That wouldn't have been very nice.
It wasn't very nice.
Bit sad.
But things were tough at one stage. But anyway, we got through that. And
now, you also found time to do community service out here. You did Meals on Wheels, didn't you?
I did, yeah, with Jean Warren. And we used to we'd have the 3 kids in the Volkswagen, and away we'd go. And the kids loved it, and so did the recipients. They just loved to see the kids. No, I did that for years and years. Well, after the kids went to school, I was still doing it when we went back into Warrigal. So,
okay, and did you have the kids in the boot by any chance?
No, they'd sit along the back seat.
Because there was plenty enough of that.
Yes, oh God, yes. You can imagine when you did a week shopping, well, you'd be packed up to the rafters.
When we went to primary school, there were about 15 of us kids in a car because a few of the parents around would take it week by week about. Kids would be sitting on the floor, standing up on the back seat, sitting on the back seat, squashed down on the floor in the front. They were just everywhere.
Yes, oh, you did all those. I mean, when you think about it, your health and safety went out the window when you were on a farm.
Now, war, where did war fit in?
No, I was at school when war finished, at state school, because I was born in 37 and it finished in 45. And I remember that day that the war was over. As a kid, you always had the coupons, and when shopping, we had a little shop down the end of the street opposite the state school, and I always used to get sent down with coupons to buy your butter and your sugar, and I mean clothing and that, you had to have so many coupons and that. Yeah, the kids of today don't know they're alive.
Was it scary?
Well, it wasn't to me, no, it wasn't to me, because things, I suppose we were so used to it, we just never expected anything else. Like we'd have, if you got a bottle of lemonade, you got that at Christmas times and high days. You didn't just go down and buy a bottle of lemonade. That was something special, and cordial and things like that. The kids that are hooked on Coke these days, I don't know how they'd have survived.
No, well, we wouldn't have had a hope. It was Christmas time only.
Yes, exactly. That's right. No, but you learned to do without and make do.
Now, what about Tetoora Rd? Because this is a powerful community. It has been for a long time, and it still is. Speak about Tetoora Rd and the community when you were married out here.
Well, I remember the first time I came to the ladies' club, Beverly was 3 months old, and I thought, what a great group. It was because it covered everybody, whether they were the older grandmothers or the new ones, and we just fell into joining up and doing everything together. Like come Christmas time, you'd have parties at one another's houses, you'd have New Year's Eve parties, and everything was, you'd have progressive dinners around the district and things like that.
What do you mean progressive dinner?
Well, you'd have soup at one house, then we'd have the main meal at another one and finish up somewhere for the sweets.
Gosh, that sounds great.
They were really something in those days. I believe the last one was after we'd shifted into Warrigal, soon after we shifted, and we've been there 30 years. And our place was the sweets, I think. Daryl was in the football then. And that was the last one I've heard of those, but they were they charged, and that was a money raiser. So that was great fun. But no, we had a lot of house parties. We had all the kids 21st. We used to put up a tent and had all the 21st. We had Beverly's engagement party at home. So different to these days, and you catered for them yourselves. No mucking around. I mean, when we first got married too, I had an ice chest, no fridge, and a copper. They were great, especially for the nappies. They were good for that. And then I got an old machine that was Kevin's mother's, and it must have gone for 50 years without anything wrong with it.
None of this built-in obsolescence for new stuff now.
It was just the agitator, and you put them in. The washing could be done in half the time that it takes them these days.
Now, I don't get this because I remember I've heard so many ladies talk about how they or their mothers used to boil the sheets in the copper. Now, why do you have to boil sheets?
I don't know. It was the done thing, and you used to have the velvet soap and you'd slice it off in slithers and put it in. We didn't have... we did get Rinso in, was the next thing that came out, but generally, especially with the nappies and that, you sliced your velvet soap and boiled up and you used to always have a copper stick that you lifted them up, and this boiling hot stuff, and then put it through the wringer and that you had to turn into the water, and then that went into the blue water.
Yeah.
But it was just done. You just did it.
Fantastic. So it's been good, you moving out
Absolutely.
here.
Yes, it has. Yes, I enjoyed every minute of it. Had 31 years out here, and I'm into my 31st back in Warrigal now.
Oh, marvellous. Well, thank you very much for telling us a few yarns.
That's okay.